Welcome to a slice of Iran and its beautiful people. I'm a peace activist from California, and in 2007 and 2010, I felt compelled to visit Iran to find out just what this axis of evil country is all about. I went with Global Exchange the first time and with Fellowship of Reconciliation 3 years later. What I saw during both trips was so far from what I expected that I came home feeling a strong need to share my findings. Hopefully, you'll get a sense of what I experienced through the following photos and footage. The Iranian people are not their government. When I was there, I heard, "I love Americans," more times than I could count. An alignment with Iran would give us a second friend in the Middle East, and we could use this now more than ever. In 2010, I was invited to a Turkish-Iranian wedding in Tehran. I had a long conversation with the bride's younger sister about how much Iranians love Americans. Considering that we overthrew their democratically elected government in 1953, supported Iraq in the Iran-Iraq War, shot down a commercial airliner with 290 passengers aboard, and more, I could never quite figure out why Iranians still like Americans. According to this young woman, it's because we share the same values. They also don't blame the American people for the harm done to them by our government. In 2007, I talked with Iranians, and they complained openly about their government, claiming that it was oppressive and unresponsive to their needs. When I returned in 2010, after the 2009 election and the birth of the Green Movement, they were afraid to say anything on camera because the government had killed and tortured so many of their friends and relatives. The Iranians I met came mostly from the urban middle class, but unfortunately, they are not the majority. Students and supporters of the Green Movement have gone to great lengths to maintain their connection with the modern, free-thinking world, but they are persecuted along with other minorities. If the government wasn't so afraid of being overthrown, they might have become more integrated with the progressive elements of society and established a stronger sense of stability in the region. There is more of a chance of turning around anti-Israel American sentiment in Iran than in any other country in the Middle East. I am concerned, however, that our policies are being formulated by an Israeli government that believes that instability and lack of central power in the region is the best way to keep their country safe. The United States also wants control of Iran's enormous oil reserves. As I see it, the issue is less about Iran becoming a nuclear threat than it is about Iran becoming a strong, influential force in the region. Israel and the United States would like to see a regime change in Iran. They'd prefer to bring in someone like the Shah who's sympathetic to the West. The next best thing in the eyes of Netanyahu is to keep Iran destabilized and weak through the use of sanctions. Israel is understandably fearful of groups like Hezbollah, which is armed by Iran. But if the peace accord fails, Hezbollah will undoubtedly receive even more support from Iran, which will cause even more destabilization in the region and eventually lead to war. I am deeply concerned about the survival of Iran and Israel. There are no easy answers, but many have said that listening to the neocons and Netanyahu will only lead to another catastrophic war like the one they created in Iraq, with more radicalization and more suffering. Americans need to stand up to the neocons and their Republican lackeys. Now is the time to call your congressperson, tell them to support President Obama's efforts to avert another war in the Middle East, and insist that they cast their vote in favor of the peace accord. This is our best option for a safer world and a more peaceful future. Simply put, I want to stand up for the moderate, loving, intelligent people of the world. I want to share some interesting, possibly even surprising information with you. First of all, as I've mentioned, the Iranians I met love Americans. The two countries in the Middle East that like Americans the most are Iran and Israel. 70% of the population of Iran is under the age of 30. Iran hasn't attacked another country in over 200 years. When the United States was born, Iran was already 2,000 years old. It is an ancient but sophisticated culture. Iran's nuclear weapons program was discontinued in 2003, according to a 2007 report compiled by 16 U.S. intelligence agencies, known as the National Intelligence Estimate. Hundreds of hours of inspection by the International Atomic Energy Agency have failed to produce any evidence of a nuclear weapons program. Iran never did decide to develop a nuclear weapon, according to today's U.S. intelligence officials. Iranian activities are extensively monitored, so any sign of a decision to go ahead with a weapons program would be detected. 7 out of 10 Americans still think Iran has a nuclear weapon. In 2005, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, issued a fatwa stating the production, stockpiling, and use of nuclear weapons are forbidden under Islam, and Iran shall never acquire these weapons. The Ayatollah has the final say on all decisions. The United States supported Iraq's war with Iran from 1980 to 1988 by providing Saddam Hussein with intelligence and military support. Iran's major oil refineries were destroyed during the war, so Iran has been forced to export its crude oil to be refined. The U.S.-sponsored sanctions have prevented Iran from repairing or building new refineries, so they have been forced to rely on other forms of energy. Iran wants to develop nuclear power to generate electricity. Although Iran is currently an exporter of oil, its growing population could require it to import oil in just over a decade if they don't generate electricity from an alternative source. In the past, Iran invited American and other Western companies to participate in a consortium to develop Iran's civilian nuclear program for electricity, but their offer was refused by the United States. Nuclear power was introduced to Iran by the U.S. after its democratically elected government was overthrown by the CIA in 1953. Dick Cheney, Ronald Rumsfeld, and Paul Wolfowitz, on behalf of President Ford, persuaded the U.S.-imposed Shah to build over 20 nuclear reactors. Iran remains a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and has the right to enrich uranium for a civilian nuclear program. India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel have not signed on to the treaty. Israel has over 100 nuclear weapons. In 2007, the United States Congress authorized spending $400 million to finance covert operations in Iran to destabilize the country's leadership and gather intelligence about its suspected nuclear weapons program. Iran has a Jewish population of 25,000, the largest Jewish community in the Middle East outside of Israel. There are synagogues in many Iranian cities where Jews practice their faith freely. Jews also have an elected representative in parliament. According to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, Iran is one of the least anti-Semitic Muslim-majority countries in the world. Near the end of the Iraq-Iran war, an Iranian civilian airliner, Iran Flight 655, was shot down by the United States in Iranian airspace, and all 290 passengers and the crew, including 66 children, were killed. The Iranian government maintains the U.S. knowingly shot down the aircraft. The U.S. paid $61.8 million as compensation, but has never apologized. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, has never tested a nuclear device, has never produced weapons-grade uranium, and is not threatening to bomb its neighbors. Iranians do not want to go to war with the United States. If they did, they know their country would be obliterated by the 45 pro-Western military bases surrounding them. 59% of the American people favor the peace accord with Iran. Neocons, Republicans, and arm manufacturers do not. They want to keep Iran isolated and demonized. Ultimately, they want to overthrow Iran's current government and replace it with a regime more favorable to the West. Many of the Iranians I met were not happy with their government and wanted a change, but they emphasized that this change needs to come from the inside. They are a very proud people, and they're tired of being pushed around by larger powers, but they're also tired of living in fear of their own government. As I see it, it's just a matter of time before the people rise up and replace this repressive regime. Women, in particular, are in the forefront of this movement for change. Americans can help by pressuring their own government to take a hands-off approach. Hopefully, the sanctions will end and Iranians will find their rightful place among the nations of the world.
Fresh Iranian bread.
All the best, Americans.
Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed your visit in Iran.
That the United States and Iran live wonderfully together and create friendships between the United States and Iran.
I'd like to come America.
Well, that you would be welcome. You would be welcome in America.
Dreams country.
Yes. Well, thank you.
People can always learn from each other. People always have a balance with each other, and through travel and being able to see these beautiful things, then you can learn a lot from each other, from different cultures, and yeah, it's very special. So come to Iran.